Brey here with Pops and Schools. In my last video, I discussed creating diatonic triads and thinking about Roman numerals in different key centers. Today we're going to build on that concept and we're going to talk about using 2-5-1 progressions as well as rootless voicings to build more sophisticated chords. In jazz and many other types of music, we often play what are called 2-5-1 chord progressions, which are exactly what they sound like. If we're in the key of C major, which has no sharps and no flats, the second degree of the scale, or 2, Roman numeral 2, is D, the fifth degree is G, and the first degree, the 1, is C. If we build triads off of those chords, as I discussed in my last lesson, we get the chords D minor, G major, and C major. Now if we did that same thing, but we added a seventh to each of those chords, we'd get D minor 7, G7, and C major 7. And today, we're going to learn a sophisticated way to voice all those same chords with extensions, rootless voicings in the right hand, and a bass note in the left. There are all sorts of theoretical rules that go into constructing and naming chords. But even without knowing all of the rules and without knowing all of the names of the chords, we can use our understanding of key centers and our understanding of the shapes on piano to build extended chords. So right now I'm going to walk you through how to play a 2-5-1 progression, which we discussed, in the key of C, using what we call a rootless voicing in the right hand and the bass note of the chord, or the root of the chord, in the left hand. First, we'll start with what we know. We know that the roots of this chord progression, this 2-5-1, are the 2, the 5, and the 1 in the key of C major, which we already said are the D, G, and C. And so in order to get a more rich sound, we're actually going to move all of those notes down an octave. So the left hand is very simple in this exercise, in this 2-5-1 exercise. First chord will be D, minor 9. Second chord will be something called G13. Don't worry too much about that. The third chord will be a C major 9. And so the left hand will simply play D, G, and C. Now that we know the left hand is playing the roots of the chords, let's take a look at what the right hand is going to be playing. The right hand here will be playing what we call rootless voicings, because the left hand already has the root covered, which means that these voicings in the right hand don't have to have a root and can instead include important extensions of each chord. So let's walk through it. Our first chord is D minor 9, and what I'd like to do to start is find that D in the left hand that you'll be playing down the octave, and then the bottom note in the right hand is going to be the third of the chord. Hopefully you can find the third of the chord by building the triad that we learned earlier, D, F, A. And then what you'll do is you'll find that third, and the right hand will play it with your thumb up an octave. So we'll be playing a D in the left hand, and the third in your thumb. And then in this set of rootless voicings, the ABA position, what we'll do is we'll simply build up thirds from there in the right hand. So now you're playing the root in the left hand, the third as the bottom note in the right hand with your thumb, the fifth with your pointer finger, the seventh with your middle finger, and the ninth with your pinky. And we call this a D minor 9 chord. So this is our D minor 9 chord, or our 2 chord in the key of C major. Now in order to get to our 5 chord, which has G as the root, we'll play that G in the left hand, and keeping our right hand in place, we're going to use a tactic called voice leading to find a very close by voicing of a sophisticated chord to play on the 5 in C major. And that chord is going to be called G13. And you don't need to know necessarily why it's called that just yet, but we can follow the motions on the piano to understand how to move from chord to chord. So here's D minor 9. Keeping your right hand in place, find the next chord in your left hand, that G, and then the only note that changes in the right hand for the G13 chord is going to be this C is going to move down a half step. It's going to move down diatonically to the next note, which is B. So now you should be playing G, F, A, B, E. So in other words, the only notes that move are your root moves from D to G, and your middle finger moves from C to B. So here's our 2-5 so far, and now we're going to learn the 1 chord. D minor 9. We change just the left hand and the middle finger of the right hand. For G13, and then the easy part is finding the 1 in the left hand. We're just going to go to the note C, and in the right hand, all the notes that didn't move, so in other words, your thumb, your index finger, and your pinky are now going to move down a step. But your third finger already moved, so it's going to stay where it is. So to recap, getting from G13 to C major 7, which is our 1 chord, will look like this. G will go to C, and then your thumb will move down to E, your pointer finger will move down to G, and your pinky will move down to D. So you should be playing C, E, G, B, and D. So let's recap our whole 2-5-1 in C major. Roots in the left hand, so starting with D, we find the third of D, up an octave, which is F, and then we build thirds from there. And then we're just going to follow the motions of the chord. Here's D minor 9. We'll move our root in the left hand and our third finger in the right. And now we have G13, and then we're going to resolve to C in the left hand and move the rest of the fingers down that didn't move in the right hand. Now these patterns will apply in every single key center. All of the same movements will be exactly the same. The only difference will be what the accidentals or the sharps and flats are in each key center. So this was an ABA 2-5-1 in C major. Now let me walk you through the same thing in the key of D major. In D major there are 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So what that means is that every time I would have found an F on the piano or a C on the piano, as I find these shapes in this 2-5-1, now that F will always be an F sharp and that C will always be a C sharp. But all the same rules apply other than the accidentals. So if I'm building a 2-5-1 in D major, the very first thing I have to do is find my 2, which is E, a step above D in the left hand, my 5, which is a fifth above D, and my 1. So those notes are E, A, and D. And then if you remember, when we're building our 2 chord, what we do is we find the third of it, which is G, and then move that up an octave and play it with the right hand. So now we're playing E, and then G, and then we simply build thirds from there. Here, the next white key that's a third above D on the piano is an F, but remember, D major has 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp, so that F becomes an F sharp. And now, we have our 2 minor 7 chord in the key of D major, which is also called E minor 7, or more specifically, E minor 9. From here, we follow exactly the same steps that we followed in C major, accounting for the accidentals that D major has. So we start here, E minor 9, we find our A for our 5 chord, and then the only note that moves is that middle finger. It'll move down to C sharp, not down to C, because we have a C sharp as well as an F sharp in the key of D major. E minor 9, A13, and now we'll find D, the 1 chord in the left hand, and the rest of the notes that didn't move in the right hand will now move down. So that'll be D, F sharp, A, C sharp, and E. E minor 9, A13, D major 9, a 2-5-1 in the key of D major. Hope you enjoyed today's lesson on 2-5-1s and rootless voicings. Here's a ballad called Central Park West that uses quite a few 2-5-1s, written by Philly's very own John Coltrane.